Hey everyone, Adam here. So before we begin, I just wanted to apologize about this bed in the background here. Essentially, we're getting a huge renovation project done on our house, and this is the only quiet area that we have. So sorry about all that, but hey, I got to film and let's get her done. So if you watched my last video, it was a riveting video about me purchasing a coffee maker and how I made a mistake purchasing that coffee maker. Very riveting. So I wanted to follow up with that video and talk about mistakes and how that, making small mistakes is actually okay. Small mistakes are going to happen. And it also gives you an opportunity to actually learn from your mistakes. Now, before we continue, obviously I need to make you aware of the fact that not all mistakes are created equal. Big mistakes can be problematic. Catastrophic mistakes are just what they sound like, catastrophic. You want to avoid those. However, small mistakes are probably okay and not really a big deal. In fact, as I said, small mistakes allow you to kind of learn and grow from your mistakes. So then the next question obviously is, well then, how do I gauge a big mistake versus a small mistake? So basically, before doing anything, I kind of go through this in my head. I say, okay, what is the worst case scenario that I am aware of that could happen? Now, it is true, sometimes a big mistake could happen because you're totally unaware of the consequences. But a lot of times you might have like some kind of idea or a vague idea of the big mistake that could follow if something were to go wrong. So just before I'm about to do anything, I say to myself, okay, what is that I know of the worst possible situation or mistake that could be made by doing this? And how can I mitigate those risks so that this doesn't end up being a big mistake? And you can kind of think through that also with the small mistakes. Like, oh, okay, if I do this, this may be the small mistake that results. Again, you want to try to minimize the potential of a known big mistake from happening. Now, truth be told, this is probably similar to a risk assessment. I don't know, maybe in the future video, I'll research that and do a proper video on risk assessment. But yeah, essentially you are just trying to figure out, like a big mistake versus a small mistake and the probability of a big mistake potentially occurring again, that you know about. I will fully admit it is probably better to make small mistakes along the way than to take no action at all. If you're always worried about making zero mistakes, then you're going to take no action, and let's face it, you're probably never going to get anything done. So let me give some examples to hopefully tie this whole concept together and better articulate what in the world I'm talking about. Let's just take a simple concept. You want to get healthier by working out, training, running, whatever it happens to be. Let's just call it working out for this example. Now, right off the bat, I can think of a mistake that people may make. Maybe people are worried about overtraining, right? If you train too hard, you might injure yourself, or you may try to take on too much too fast, right? That's all kind of the symptoms of an overtraining issue. Now, on the flip side, if you don't train, if you don't work out, and you have unhealthy habits, well, what's that worst scenario look like? Well, you could create underlying issues or diseases by not working out, right? If you're obese or overweight and you have high blood pressure, or if you're at risk for having a heart attack, or whatever ailment that may be that you're at risk for, may be just compounded by not working out and taking no action whatsoever. So if you take no action, meaning you decide not to work out, then, and if you already have an underlying health issue that might be helped dramatically by working out, I'm not saying all health issues are fixed by working out, but a lot of them can be helped or reduced by simply working out. Then if you take no action, you are guaranteed to still have that underlying health issue or potentially make that underlying health issue worse. If you overtrain while you're working out, you could suffer a mild injury as a result. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed to suffer a overtraining injury, but it's something that could happen if you do not take the proper precautions, right? So that would be a mistake. Hopefully it wouldn't be a long-term catastrophic mistake. Hopefully you would listen to your body and be like, you know what, my leg just doesn't feel right as I'm working out. I'm going to, back off. I'm going to do some research, and, maybe this is caused by overtraining, or maybe there are other exercises that I can do to help alleviate this problem and still do something that's healthy. But let's say it's a small mistake that you make with overtraining. You start feeling a little bit sore, and not like muscle soreness, but like bone soreness, like something that is just not a symptom of working out, right? Like that good soreness you get from a workout, something a lot more sinister, right? Like a knee pain or something like that, okay? So that would have been a mistake that you made. Maybe you're not training properly. Maybe you're overtraining, a whole host of mistakes that maybe you have made. But here's the thing. Hopefully, as I said, it's a small mistake, and then you can learn from that mistake. And so you're like, okay, I'm getting knee pain when I'm doing this squat, for example. How do I alleviate that? Is it an overtraining thing? Is it improper form? Am I just trying to move around too quickly? So you're going to take this mistake, right? The mistake of small mistake of having a issue with your knee, and you're going to try to remedy it. To me, that is a much, much better approach than saying, oh, you know what? I could overtrain, therefore I'm going to do nothing. So if you take no action, then you are guaranteed to not get in shape because you've decided to take no action and not risk the potential of making a mistake along the way. So, as I alluded to in the beginning of this video, that riveting video of me making a mistake with a coffee maker, it was a small mistake. It was a $50 mistake. It no longer serves a purpose for me. I can donate it. But essentially, because of that purchasing mistake, I'm only out $50. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that probably big of a deal and not that big of a mistake. And I learned something from it. So let's talk about some examples that might have catastrophic mistakes, right? And these are the things that you definitely want to avoid. So if you're purchasing a home or looking to purchase a home or apartment or whatever, and it is way out of your budget, basically you're buying way too much house, that could have a catastrophic mistake if you're not careful. Why? If you bought too much house, perhaps you can't afford the maintenance on the house. Perhaps you can't afford going on trips or some of the other things that you like to do, and as a result, your happiness kind of suffers because, again, you ended up buying too much house. And then, worst case scenario is that you bought too much house, you weren't able to save up an emergency fund, you lose your job or whatever happens because you were barely making ends meet as it was, and then now you risk losing your house, right? All because of the mistake of realizing later on that, oh, you know what, maybe I purchased too much house. So yeah, there were some unlucky events that may trigger you losing your house. But the ultimate mistake was that, unfortunately, maybe you purchased too much house and realized it a little bit too late. So that would be an example of maybe a big mistake or a mistake that you probably don't want to make. And then another example, let's say you get into woodworking, right? You're like, I've always wanted to get into woodworking. I have no idea how to do it, but I've always wanted to get into it. So, one of the mistakes a few of the small mistakes you could possibly make is that maybe you buy the wrong tool and then you waste money buying the wrong tool, or you're not great at cutting the wood yet, and you're going to make small mistakes, and it's going to be a little bit more expensive because you're going to go through some more pieces of wood until you figure out how to better cut the wood, for example, right? But those would all be, I would consider, smallish mistakes as long as you have the money to support this hobby. And in the process, hopefully, like whenever you make a bad cut, maybe you'll learn from it. Okay, maybe I need to use this technique with the saw, or maybe I need to measure 3 times and only cut once to not have to make the mistake of keep cutting these wood pieces over and over again. But if you've never used a saw before, there could be a catastrophic mistake. If it's the first time using your saw and you have no idea what you're doing and didn't research it ahead of time, perhaps if you're not being safe about it, you could actually cut off a finger. And in my book, cutting off a finger, that would be a catastrophic mistake. Don't cut off your finger. So as long as you know that that could be a risk when you're kind of looking into getting into woodworking, you can take the proper precautions. Okay, let me research, how do I use the saw properly, and how do I make sure to keep my fingers away at all times away from the saw, right? It's very similar to using a knife. So in summary, if you can, gauge all the known mistakes that you may think could potentially happen. If possible, try to reduce or mitigate the big mistakes as much as possible. And then during that list, if you gauge it to be mostly small mistakes that have the highest probability of happening that you can potentially see, then go for it, because making small mistakes is probably a much better alternative than doing nothing at all and basically not taking any action. And if you do make a small mistake, one, it's okay to make small mistakes. And two, the most important thing is, once you do make your small mistake, to learn from it, to try to grow from it, and use it as a way to improve yourself and try to avoid those mistakes in the future. All right, so that's it for this video. Hopefully you found this video helpful. And again, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.